Welcome, everyone. This is the Art of Pivoting Your Life. And today I have a wonderful guest with me, Adele Wang, who is a life and leadership coach. And I'm super excited to talk to her and see what tips she has for everyone because, as you know, we love to share with everybody and make sure they know how they can pivot their lives and create change. So thank you everybody for joining us. And Adele, thank you so much for being here.
Great to be here, Michelle.
I appreciate it. So tell us a little about your practice. Give us contact information if somebody wants to reach out to you for assistance.
Sure. Well, I work with people all around the world. Usually they are professionals or business owners, typically under a lot of pressure.
Oh
So
yeah.
there's a lot of decisions, there's a lot of relationship issues, everything compacted in a tiny little ball, and they are trying to move through it with as much joy and not disappear into the sauce. I like to say, because most of my clients are like me, often very high, they're thinkers. And this life that we're moving into, especially now with the big changes happening, everything is much more about um, living fully
Yeah.
rather than how much more can you accomplish. And so I think this is a great inflection point that brings up a lot of things, pivoting, what makes you happy, tips. So yeah, it's a great journey. It was for me. I learned the hard way.
I was gonna say, I'm
And
sure you made some big pivots in your life, right?
And I was not one of those people that was like this in the beginning at all. I have no qualms in telling people I was the most clueless you could imagine in terms of how to connect deeply with others, people, myself, life. I mean, I was really lost and learned the hard way through a series of I mean, now I can say they were blessings. But yeah, how
Yeah.
to pivot? Because if you don't pivot intentionally, a lot of times life will kind of nudge you into that direction.
Or
No,
push you off a cliff, you know.
exactly. Exactly. That's what happened to me.
Yeah, same. Definitely got some pushes from the universe. Like, okay, I get it now. I'm trying. Tell me, like, briefly about any big pivot that took that you've brought into
Yes,
your coaching practice.
right. One of the biggest things I'm inviting all my clients and maybe your audience into is a conversation that goes beyond self-improvement, mindset work, working on myself, working on my limiting beliefs. I'm working on my enlightenment. I'm working on, like, what I've noticed is we have a culture of people who are constantly working on themselves. And I know this because when I bring things up, people are already plenty aware. Like they're so aware of all their issues, whether it's their attachment style or their limiting belief. I mean, that's not really where the stick is. It's not like you can become more aware of yourself to the
Right.
point where you're actually enjoying yourself. So the big shift for me, the big pivot was to consider that too much of that kind of more aware digging can actually work against you.
Yeah, sort of like holding on to the story.
Well, you're never done. That's
Yeah.
the thing. I mean, you could always find another story, and then there's another story behind that, another limiting belief behind that. And what I've noticed for me was the pivot was to consider that that was not the answer because I thought, well, as long as you're finding more ahas, you keep doing it, but
Yeah.
it's not actually making you feel better. My pivot was to set some of that stuff aside. And that was a huge pivot for me because I thought that's what we should do. I thought, well, you should keep improving yourself. But what I tell people is it's a different model rather than fixing yourself.
Hmm.
Really more about growth. So
Yeah.
when you, and I invite anyone who's listening, if you can just intuitively feel into the vibration, the difference between fixing yourself and growth.
Hmm.
One tends to feel kind of, at least to me, more constricted, more maybe shame-based, more, white knuckle, fight
Yeah, and
flight, I
fixing
think
is sort of like uh, like there's something wrong.
exactly. And
Yeah.
that if I could just fix that, And the operative word is just. Anytime I hear someone say, yep, I know, I just need to let that go. I just need to X. I know that they're in the fix it mode.
Yeah.
Because growth mode doesn't sound like that at all. The growth mode is one of, oh, how cool is that? Oh,
Hmm.
well, this is interesting. It doesn't have a sense of, I just need to.
Right.
So for
It's
me, a
like
big,
observing.
well, it's like, huh,
Oh, interesting.
interesting. And
Yeah.
I wonder. So growth has much more of a vibration of curiosity.
Hmm.
Fix has more of a vibration of, I know what the answer is. Like, just do that.
Yeah.
And growth, and I think this is the pivot for a lot of people because growth means there's no answer. There's no just do that. It's like, well, I don't know where I'm going, but I'm going somewhere.
Yeah.
And maybe I can just follow the current. This is a huge pivot for
Yeah.
many people.
Yeah, I love this because, obviously we're in the same work and I'm like, yes, this really, I haven't seen this perspective before put in this way. So it's very interesting because actually earlier I was in a class and we were talking about, the being the fixer or, and like there's nothing wrong. There is nothing wrong. We can just it's like, oh, okay, that's cool. Look at that. Look at this coming up. How interesting.
How interesting. And of course, it's so much easier when we're maybe supporting someone else. But this fix it is so ingrained in people.
Oh yeah.
Even when people say, I know I shouldn't should on myself. Well, my goodness, I mean, just the way that's coming out is I'm still trying to not do something,
Right.
instead of, yeah, it's kind of a paradox, So in my work, I often have found great success in stepping out of more mind work because asking the mind to stop what it's already doing for me has been it's hard. I mean, you can do it, but it's exhausting. It's like the
Hmm.
mind trying to control its own thinking. It takes a lot of energy. And so for me, the biggest pivot personally and with a lot of my clients is let's just leave that over here and let's use all these other buckets that you have that don't think. Because if all you have is a hammer, everything in life looks like a nail. But
Right.
my as a leadership development specialist is to give you a wrench, screwdriver, so that you have more ways of dancing with something instead of, I just need to let that go.
Right.
And when
Yeah.
people can feel into that, there's such a relief.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, I love this perspective. Thank you. So tell me a little more about like what have you seen people's like what can help people create the biggest shifts besides this new perspective on seeing,
Yeah,
nothing's wrong.
yeah, great question because the mind will take a while to really dance a different dance. It's the groove is pretty ingrained in there.
Oh yeah.
So even though I know I shouldn't do that, it's going to do that.
Right.
So rather than trying to do the double negative or like, oh, I shouldn't, we can try some other tools that don't have any mindset whatsoever. And my work uses a lot of embodiment work, which taps deeply into mojo,
Yeah.
uh, sexual energy. I
Yeah,
have
yeah,
found
yeah.
to be the most enjoyable, fastest way because you can't should that. It's just innate and people can feel that in their bodies. And for maybe 5, 10, 15 minutes, they're out of their heads and
Mm-hmm.
feeling into something much more present moment.
Yeah.
What happens is that the nervous system and the brain starts to catch up. Like it's almost like we have to give the brain a break, let it run whatever it wants to do. It's going to sit there and crank. And
Right.
in the meantime, just tap into the other side of life because a lot of my clients can't imagine what else there is. Well, if I'm not thinking, who would I be? And I'm like, that's a great question.
That is
Let's
a great question.
let's start with that. They're really actually kind of scared. Like, well, if I'm not constantly trying to improve myself, it's almost like they're afraid they would turn into somebody really horrible or a slug. They'll sit
Yes.
bonbons and nothing will get done. I mean, honestly, that's how deeply ingrained this fight, flight, fawn, freeze response to life.
Yeah. Well, it's like an addiction, right? Like
It
our
is.
brain gets kind of
It
addicted to
actually,
that drama of
yeah. And
yeah.
when it's not there, it's very disorienting.
Yeah, it's like, "Oh, I need the drama. I
It's
need the"
wrong,
yeah.
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 And so even if you know you're an addict, it can be like, oh, instead of, oh, there I go again, like what it's going to take a while for the inquiry to not keep going down that path of self-criticism. Takes a minute.
Yeah.
And my experience has been this is difficult to do by yourself.
Mhm.
One reason why I started my practice is I'm sharing with people everything that I struggled with because I read psychology books till the cows came home. I knew everything about limiting beliefs and my attachment style and I mean I was aware. I was so aware, but it didn't make me feel any better.
Yeah.
And so I had to start thinking about, all right, all of the more knowledge-based ways, if it's not helping you feel any better, in some ways, what good is it? I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
it's not useful if it just makes you feel more broken and frustrated. And
Yes.
same thing with spiritual texts. I've had many clients coming in after they've spent a lot of time in ashrams, a lot of time in psychotherapy. I mean, I get everyone who's done all that. And my thought is, if that were enough, they wouldn't be calling me. So it informed me that there is something missing in this pivoting journey that is not more mindset work or only a spiritual philosophy about life or the chakra system or which
Yeah.
is interesting. But sometimes when I look at it, to me, it's just more intellectualizing
Yeah.
of more than the actual experience of it.
Mhm.
So, but if you use your body embodiment, some of the practices that I use, you're going to be much more in the pocket of the moment. And then it's like, oh my God, I'm alive. I'm like, yeah, you are. Welcome to your life.
Right? Because 'Cause we're
Let's,
here just to feel alive,
yeah,
right?
let's just start there
Yeah.
for a minute
Experience.
at a time.
Yeah, and being present.
Yeah, it's not easy for some folks.
Oh, yeah, totally. Well, yeah, we get addicted to not being present, right?
Very much so.
Yeah. What other tools would you want to share with the audience that
My favorite tools are embodiment, which is, like I said, the feminine and masculine energies, the way it runs in the body.
yeah.
There's also, I do a lot on the power dance dynamic between people. And this
Mhm.
is one thing that makes a lot of people squirm, especially spiritual and psycho people who've done a lot of individual work.
Mhm.
That's the problem. It's only me, myself, and I. It's individual focus, but our lives are meant to be relational focused.
Yes.
So anytime you're talking about relationship, you have to be aware of what dance is in the room. And there are
Mhm.
three primary dances, which I go into in my work. Most people, especially women, only dance one. And so they're doing the same dance with every relationship and wondering why it's a little bit off. So that's an important one. And some of this is bleeding edge coming from the latest from neuroscience because I'm privy to some of the leaders in neuroscience. So let's see, power, relational dance, sexual energy. I do a lot on understanding where the energy bleeds into other people. So if you're empathic and you take on other people's stuff or like, and I'm like, yeah, that can be really debilitating.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't want to let go of that.
Yes. It's like you're addicted to being debilitated.
Well, it's a
Or
feeling of that's the way I feel life. It's like
yeah.
if that's the only channel you have to connecting with another person is through pain. Um, it's only because you care, but there are other channels, there are other ways you can connect to people besides only pain. And people are
Right.
like, can't imagine what that would be. I'm like,
Right.
come on over and let's try a few. You can always go back to that channel if you need to. It's not
Right.
bad. But a lot of people don't know how else to connect to anybody except tell me your problem, and I want to help you. And
Oh, the quote unquote trauma bonding that
well,
eh,
it's that, and yeah, there are many layers of it.
Yeah.
There are many, many different layers. And what I've learned in my work is to be very curious about the different flavors, because in the beginning, yes, we start with one general assumption. But when you're working with hundreds of people, then and each of them has a different cadence. Um, Even that one thing has like 100 different ways it runs.
Yeah.
And that's when people can be feeling much more felt and heard instead of a generalization or a
Hmm.
theory. There's a feeling of, oh, yeah. And to have that held with somebody else in the room, not a book, not even a podcast, to
Yeah.
dance with another human. Because if we're talking about relationship, you can't get better at relationship all by yourself.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't work very well. And so I have events where people can come in and just play a bit, play, not work, but play, because too many people are at home with a self-help book trying to learn how to relate to other humans. And because that was me, it doesn't work. You just get your head full of more information.
Right. You need to practice it and like see it in action, I guess would be,
Experience it. Yeah,
yeah.
because you also need feedback. And this is where people aren't used to. It's one thing to practice communication skills, like if you're in some corporate, that's fine. But where people really need help is in feedback. What is their energy saying? Most people have no idea.
Hmm.
But you can look at the state of their lives and deduce what their energetic field might be carrying. But it's like no one can see their own shadow, unless you're the whatever is that creature that pops out in front
Right.
of you, you know. And it's so useful to have someone there with you.
Yeah.
So useful. I can't understate how important that is, because our culture has this very individualist mindset.
Hmm.
That is a big part of the problem. We
Yeah.
weren't wired to live like this.
No, we need community. We
Yeah.
need each other.
And no, many people are uncomfortable in community.
Hmm.
They want community, but they don't feel comfortable in community.
Well, I think it's like, being vulnerable is part of being in a community, and it's like we're scared of being vulnerable. We're scared of rejection.
Absolutely. And how do I dance with other people's energies? This
Yeah.
person has a energy that's this, and this person has an energy of that. And one's a waltz and one's a cha-cha. So, each person has a different cadence. And
Yeah.
that's nuance of, if you invest in understanding and developing this part of you, you won't have to use so much mindset work or positive thinking or affirmations. It'll just be easier.
Yeah. Your whole
So
life
that
is
for me
easier.
was the biggest pivot, is going, oh my God, there are other ways of doing this instead of just psychology or spiritual ideas.
Yeah. 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 What's one tool that you could pass on to people that they could kind of play
Well,
with at home?
yeah, and this is always the biggest challenge, because everybody wants a book to do by themselves. I can't tell you, if I had $1 for every time someone wanted a book, or what is one thing I can do, and I'm like, you want to do this and do it by yourself. And my message is, dancing with a human is where
Yeah.
the real juice is. But given that not everyone has someone to dance with, um, I often have intro events. Just jump in. I can send you information on that on the next one. They're very low cost, or sometimes they're even free. Just jump in and get a sense of what it's like when you are working with energetic awareness, and not how to be more X, or
Mm,
how my communication style, or reflective listening, or all that stuff is more how to do something. But what I've noticed is those skills are just simulations. They are
mm,
trying to codify an experience of being fully present with someone
yeah.
who can see you, and you let them be seen, they let you be seen. A lot of times it's only one way, right? Like, especially if you're an empath,
Yeah.
you're obsessed with seeing the other person, but it's very hard for the empath to be seen. There's a,
Oh,
you know,
totally.
and it happens like that. It's not like people are purposely hiding.
No, it's
There's
all
no one's,
subconscious.
but it's just, it's a self-defense.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah.
that protective
So,
wall that comes up.
let's see. So I have events, some stuff around sexual energy, boundary work, can't really do by yourself, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, I'm trying to think. There's some meridian tapping techniques that people can use, EFT, that's somewhat helpful.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, the pivot is being in community with someone who knows what they're doing. So not a toxic group that just makes you feel worse. Let's put
Right.
it that way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because many communities, you're in community, but you don't feel safe there,
Right.
right? So it's not like you're completely alone, but you might feel lonely in a crowd.
Yeah. So like finding community is
Yeah.
would be your advice.
Well, and
And find a community that lifts you up.
yes, and people need to develop a sense of relationships can be challenged and mended. Like if
Yeah.
people have, I get the feeling people are really afraid of anything that hints at any sort of conflict. They're
Oh yeah.
gone.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's no ability now to sit with the discomfort to, well, a misunderstanding or, and they think they're being spiritual by just sort of ghosting. I'm like, oh my gosh, look at our world.
Yeah.
Everyone is fragmented. So the pivot is to have the stamina, even though it's a little bit jittery, to like, is something repairable? Or is everybody just cut off at the knees if they say something wrong?
Yeah, that I totally feel you. Like I feel like relationships are a place of healing. And that's
Yes,
really where the most healing can happen, especially if we
absolutely,
can use our use each other as mirrors. And like
absolutely,
what I see in you is in me. And we can like
absolutely,
find our shadows in that way sometimes. Because yeah, seeing our
absolutely.
shadows is so hard.
It is, even though I think when meet someone who thinks they know what their limiting belief or shadow is, I typically, like, yes, but it's usually a little bit more of an intellectualized part of the ego, is my
Hmm.
impression.
Hmm. Totally.
And it's fine. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
But most people don't recognize their shadow. And so if you're working with such a coaches such as you or me, we can gently help you see and like, oh, and not like, oh my God, I can't believe it's just, oh, well, and there's some practices I use to help integrate that
Yeah.
instead of trying to run from it so
Hmm.
hard.
Yeah. Accepting and loving our ego is I think part of the work
It's
too.
a big pivot.
Yeah, and we're out of time, unfortunately. But I really appreciate you coming on. This has been a great conversation. We're super aligned. Like, I just think this is so much fun, like talking about this stuff. And I'm always like in the growth mindset and not the fix it mindset. We all
Oh,
get in that mindset, of course, but I'm like, no, no, let's get back to the place where you want to be and the
well, no,
growth.
thank you so much for having me. I've
I
enjoyed this, and
appreciate it.
hopefully, if this lifts even one person out there,
Yes, we've done our
then
job. And just one, would you give your website real quick for anybody?
yes, adelewang.com, ADELEWANG.com. And from there, there's a bunch of resources. You can read about upcoming events. I have an e-zine that I don't send it out very often, but
Yeah.
sometimes I have cool interviews, like industry leaders and things like that, talking about issues of the day, about
Awesome.
the human experience. And there's a free gift on there too. There's a
Awesome.
meditation people can get, which I like.
Perfect. Yay. Thank you so much. And for anybody wanting to reach out to me for hypnotherapy or coaching, as always, my website is zenmindmichelle.com. And thank you everyone for joining us. And as you know, you can watch the replay on YouTube and see Adele's beautiful face. But we welcome that you've listened on the radio tonight. And thank you so much for being here.